Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for ParkOn. We hope you've been enjoying the event so far. In this session, we'll hear about tactics for living well, and we hope you'll come away feeling inspired to implement some of these strategies into your daily life. I'm your host, Liz Nash, the Research Support Network Manager at Parkinson's UK. I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Indu Subramanian, who's a Clinical Professor of Neurology at UCLA. Also, Suzanne Bourne, co-founder and head of carer support at Mobilize Care Limited. And finally, Tim Hague, speaker, author, executive director of U-Turn Parkinson's, and co-founder of the PD Avengers. I'm really looking forward to hearing more from all of our speakers, and we'd love to hear from you too, so please do share your comments and reflections in the chat. You can raise a question using the Ask a Question button, and we'll get through as many as we can at the end of the session. Like all of our sessions, if you'd like to watch this one back, or if you have any technical issues, don't worry. All of the conference content is being recorded and will be available to watch on demand for 30 days following the event. I'll firstly hand over to Dr. Subramanian. Enjoy the session.
Hello and welcome to my talk. My name is Indu Subramanian. I'm a neurologist at UCLA in Los Angeles, and I direct our Center of Excellence at the VA, which is the Veterans Administration in Los Angeles. It's my pleasure and passion to take care of Parkinson's patients, and I wanted to teach you a little bit about my new concepts of wellness and how to really incorporate social connection in our sort of game plan for helping people living with Parkinson's. So hopefully I can motivate you a little bit and make you think a little bit outside the box. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. So my talk is entitled The Power of Social Connection in Parkinson's Disease, but I'm really going to give you a little bit of a framework that's a little bit different than what you may have been used to. So we all know about Parkinson's disease, and this is why we're all here together. It's a disease that was described by James Parkinson 200 years ago, and classically was thought to be a motor disease. And I think if you look at these Netter drawings here, these are drawings that we all learned from in medical school. These are, the sort of depiction of Parkinson's and who gets it. So it's like a white male disease of affluent white men that are often married. And these are the people that are being studied in our trials, and these are the people that are getting the best care throughout the world. And so I think we have to really think about this sort of depiction and what it means for people who are not in this community. So people who are women, people who are of color, people who may have a different sexual orientation, and really think about how we can deliver care to everyone on the planet with Parkinson's disease in a different way. So that's been something that I've been really thinking about in 2021 and beyond. Additionally, we've really billed this as a motor disease. When we look at these sorts of depictions, we really think about tremor, stiffness, slowness, and postural instability. But as many of you know, there's sort of this sense that there's proteins that are depositing in this part of the brain called the midbrain, and dopamine is not being produced well. These proteins start low and spread throughout the nervous system and the body. And really, there's not just a motor symptom cascade, but really a huge non-motor burden. When we talk to patients, this sort of sense that there's just an abnormality in that one motor area is really false. And really, there's huge non-motor burden that is lying under the water. It's really the tip of the iceberg with the motor symptoms. And really, a lot of patients complain in terms of quality of life, in terms of mental health things, in terms of their non-motor issues. And I think we really have to think about these things when we're addressing our patients. So historically, there's been a timeline in which we go through those stages. I showed you those pictures of the body in that man starts one side and then eventually becomes bilateral and then eventually becomes bedbound and wheelchair bound. And I think we have, some strategies to help with that from a motor standpoint. But I think many of us are thinking about Parkinson's in this other timeline. So there's this prodromal timeline in which we may have some things in healthy populations that may sort of be a constellation of things that are risk factors for developing Parkinson's disease. And when these live together in a person, you have a sense that they may be at risk for getting Parkinson's. And so these things include a lack of sense of smell, fighting in the dreams, and sometimes constipation, mood issues. So we have this population that may be present in our midst that show up before we ever have motor symptoms that already have changes in terms of their Parkinson's symptoms. and risk factors. So then we have, as people come to my office and we diagnose them with Parkinson's, we are able to follow people over a number of years, often decades. And the sense is that we may have strategies that we can intervene with throughout this sort of timeline that may help change the trajectory of disease. And I'd love to sort of talk to you a little bit about my concept of this, because historically we've had this medication called levodopa, carbidopa. I think it's called Matapar in the UK, and the US it's called Sinemet. This drug has been around for 50 years. And much of what therapy is in Parkinson's is repurposing this drug in different formulations, allowing it to absorb better, putting it in patches and things like that. We've also had some surgeries that have been created and other devices that we can insert in the body. But really, I think much of what we do is focus on motor symptoms in a very sort of linear path. So I'd really like to expand our horizons and think about the concept of wellness. So what is wellness? Wellness is kind of a novel concept that I'd love to teach you about. So it's really the active pursuit of activities, choices, and lifestyles that lead to a state of more holistic health. The sense is that the person, the patient, has some control over lifestyle choices that they make every day. The concept is that the concept of health is holistic. It incorporates things like lifestyle choices, mental and spiritual well-being. It's not just physical things, and also incorporates the person in their cultural context, in their environment, and really is trying to understand the person and what makes them tick. So we think about the classic medical paradigm, and you have somebody who gets sick, they come in with symptoms, they come and see me in an office, I'm wearing a white coat and an ivory tower, and I see that patient once in 6 months. I might be able to see them for 15 minutes. I tweak a pill that I showed you, and then I send you back out. And 6 months go by, and then we do the same thing again. And this is really episodic, compartmentalized care in which the clinical responsibility is on me as a provider. And really, the patient comes in and complains about a symptom, and I'm trying to correct that symptom. I'd like to think about that sort of concept of health in a different way. Let's think about a wellness paradigm in which the road is to thriving. It's not just to correct a symptom, but really to live at the best possible optimal state of well-being that you can. Really, the person who's living with Parkinson's is part of the equation. They're trying to pick lifestyle choices every day, try to use their self-agency to try to connect with things that are accessible to them, trying to prevent their disease from getting worse. The concept is that this is a holistic concept, that the patient is responsible, that it's integrated into their day-to-day lives. And really the sense is that it's quite a different paradigm than what we are traditionally taught in the Western medical model. It's quite different than the classic sort of sense of well-being and happiness, which are really emotional states. And I think one of the things that's been a problem is just the term wellness has been branded in such a way that it comes with the wellness industry. There's a sense that it talks about cute yoga pants or an expensive gym or spa membership. And really, I'd like to teach you about some principles that I think hopefully are very accessible and relatively free or at low cost to us all. So I work at the VA, I told you. I take care of veterans with Parkinson's. And it is, this concept of whole health has been really accepted and trying to be rolled out throughout the Veterans Administration. And it's kind of a cool paradigm. So you have the patient in the middle with a number of things that affect them in terms of lifestyle choices, in terms of their surroundings, the people that love them, the relationships that they have. And then we have this sort of concept that you have not just treatment, but preventative care, and that there's these complementary approaches that we can use along with the Western paradigm to help, and also that the patient is living in their community. So it's not an isolated just patient-doctor relationship, but really it's more concept of a bigger picture. I love this drawing by the First Nations. They're the indigenous sort of people of the United States, a tribe that is amongst us. And basically, it's really cool because it contextualizes the concept of their wellness concept, which is that the human being is in the middle. There's a number of things that are spiritual, emotional, mental around them. There's a relationship with things like wisdom, respect, responsibility. They really have a very close bond with ancestral sort of ideas, the land. So the other things like the land, the nations, the community, their family, all are part of this wellness concept. And then we have the larger concept of the environment, the social, cultural, and economic milieu in which the person is living. So it's really this sort of holistic idea. And I think it's important for each of us to think about, for us, what culturally constitutes this sort of wellness and what connects us to the things that are most meaningful. So I'm an integrative medicine trained doctor as well. I board rooted in integrative medicine. And this is basically the medicine that straddles Western traditional approaches with other approaches that may be more in the Eastern traditions. So things like Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, the mind-body approaches, these lifestyle approaches. The sense is that the human body is very resilient, that we have this innate healing process within us. And really thinking about this sort of holistic health, the World Health Organization defined health in the 1940s, so many decades ago, as the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So I think this more holistic definition is something that I've been trying to, impart in my care. The things that go into this include a number of lifestyle choices. And I think at its core, one thing that's important to understand is what is one's purpose, so that it can guide our goals of care. So this is different culturally for each and every one of us. For somebody, it might be playing with their grandchildren. For somebody, it might be being able to golf. For somebody, it might be able to cook their family dinner. Everyone's very different in terms of what brings them meaning and joy. And I think we really have to break it down and understand this for each of us. We all believe that exercise is medicine. I won't belabor this. This is part of the wellness prescription. Staying mentally active is part of the wellness prescription. Sleep has been undervalued, but getting a good night's sleep, 8 to 9 hours a night, if you can, is absolutely part of the wellness prescription. Nutrition, you will have heard about that in this talks, in this conference. And nutrition is absolutely important. A Mediterranean diet, what you put in your body absolutely matters in the wellness prescription, including the hydration concept. A couple of things that I'd like to spend a minute talking about: the mind-body approaches. I have a background in yoga and mindfulness training. I think these are tremendously impactful for the human condition. I think that having time away from our devices, having time to really reflect, be present, use some breath work, some movement with breath work and meditation can be very helpful. Sometimes you may be doing some mind-body approaches and not even realizing it. So prayer is a form of mind-body approaches, getting out in nature, sometimes gardening, going for hikes and amongst trees. These are all some approaches that fit in this category. Sometimes just singing, dancing, playing music, and doing art, if you get in the flow state, can actually be in the mind-body approaches as well. So think about the things that you like to do, maybe pick one or two and try to focus on those. I'm now going to shift a little bit to an area that I've really become passionate about, which is the concept of social isolation in Parkinson's. We ended up publishing this paper last year on that in Nature Parkinson's Journal. So just as a background, social isolation is really important for health. And it can actually be as bad for you to be lonely as the detrimental effects of smoking a half pack of cigarettes a day or obesity. So this is a real risk factor that can affect health. In veteran populations, it can be a risk factor for suicide. And really, there's been a lack of real attention to this historically. I think, this is a basic human need, just like food, water, and shelter. And so it is something that we really need to care about. And there's been very little research in Parkinson's disease. Just so people understand, loneliness is something that is this subjective emotional state. We desire certain types of relationships in our lives, and we have certain relationships in our lives. And it's that gap between what we desire and what we have that really codes for loneliness. And so it's really something that I think is important for us to think about. Loneliness can actually have 3 spheres in which it plays out. And this is something that I didn't know. So you can be very well connected from an intimate sphere. For example, you have a spouse that cares about you in the home. But if you don't have these other 2 areas of connection, so one is relational loneliness, in which you have a friend circle. And then the third sphere is collective loneliness, in which you feel connected to a community of like-minded people, like-minded interest people. So it may be that you have a friend circle, you have the intimate sphere, but then you lack really a connection with some greater meaning in the community. So for our patients with Parkinson's, it might be belonging to a Parkinson's support group like this one. For our veterans, it may be being a veteran, or it might be something completely different from all of those things, like bird watching or land conservation. So just think about what brings you meaning and think about ways to connect yourself in that community. So it is possible to be lonely and be happily married. And so think about these 3 spheres and how you can connect these dots. So it's important to realize that loneliness can affect health in many ways. It can affect our stress levels and the effects of stress on the body. It affects immunity. It decreases immunity. It affects cognition. It can actually make people focus on certain types of negative stimuli. They tend to become a little bit ruminative rather than focusing on pleasant stimuli. And so it can really affect our thought processes and can also disrupt sleep and circadian rhythm. So as you can imagine, enter the COVID pandemic, people are watching the news, getting isolated, they get more hypervigilant, their immune systems break down, their stress cascade starts to be in effect, and then their sleep breaks down. All of these things can really lead to really a derailment in terms of healthy lifestyles and a derailment in terms of how people are feeling. So we looked at this data in Parkinson's patients in the pre-pandemic era. And what we found through a cross-sectional survey of over 1,500 patients with Parkinson's is that it was as bad for you to be lonely as the beneficial effects of exercising 7 days a week, 30 minutes a day was good for you. And so you can picture if you think about a double whammy where you may not be exercising and you may be socially isolated. These are two tremendously negative impacts. In the same way, you can empower yourself by socially connecting and getting the benefits of exercise, possibly by doing 2-for-1 strategies like going exercising in a group or finding a buddy and going for hikes. So these are things that we can try to really impart and think about the synergistic beneficial effects of some of these things as well. What we found in our data is that it's if you're lonely, that's this line here, it actually associates with negative non-motor issues that can be disabling too. So it associates with things like fatigue, motivation, memory, with cognition, sleep. All of these things can be worse in lonely people. And so it's really something that can be very impactful. So going into the pandemic with this type of data, we had the sense that we had a growing sort of Parkinson's caseload, and Parkinson's has doubled in the last 20 years, slated to double again. Sorry, in the last 40 years, slated to double again in the next 20 years. We had this loneliness pandemic that existed before the pandemic of COVID, and then we enter COVID-19. So really some concern. This pictorial was drawn very early in the pandemic with the worry that patients with Parkinson's who were becoming socially isolated, stressed, and physically inactive could have this downward cascade, really leading to issues with worsened motor function. And non-motor function. And the saviors of the day I was excited to see were things that I'd always believed in, things like socializing, mindfulness, and working out, exercise. So really thinking about these things and how they may be a strategy to combat some of the negative effects of the pandemic have been exciting to me. So we thought about, sort of how do we break the cycle of this social isolation leading to worsened stress hormone release, worsened immunity, worsened sleep, worsened motor and non-motor issues, more apathy, anxiety, and depression, leading to further sort of downward cascade from isolation. Enter social prescribing. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. So we've been encouraging patients to proactively tell their clinicians about whether they're lonely or not. Or we've been encouraging clinicians to ask these questions to their patient populations, thinking about the 3 spheres of loneliness and making sure that people have something in each of those spheres to connect them socially. We've also been trying to get clinicians to be more vigilant given the pandemic and try to connect people through proactive phone calls or support groups. So I told you about the word social prescribing. This was actually described in the New England Journal in 2020. And what it is literally, as I would prescribe you a pill for Parkinson's, I prescribe you a social support sort of intervention. So there's a link worker in the community. I put in a referral as a doctor. That link worker takes you as a patient and matches you to things that may speak to you, things like support groups, gym membership opportunities, different types of activities, and really is sort of a proactive way to kind of give you support. So this has already been known in the National Health Service here, and I think you guys in the UK have the best models of this. And if you think about, for example, the Northwest Social Prescribing Network, there's a whole host of things that are available to patients in this. And so I urge you to find some of these things in your own community and be proactive in terms of complaining about whether you're lonely or not, because it can be a huge risk factor, as I just just showed you. At the VA, we have a way to match patients with like-minded volunteers. We've sort of redeployed some volunteers that used to come physically into the VA, and we've got them calling patients proactively, either on the phone or through video visits. We actually described this in this article that was written about this concept in the New York Times. So I've been hosting a virtual support group for the last year and a half on the PMD Alliance web. And these are all hosted interviews trying to connect patients. They can see me talk to some of my colleagues, as if you might be at my dinner table listening to a conversation. All of these are linked here, and you can go on the PMD Alliance website and search for Holistic, which is the series WHOLISTIC, and you can take a look at these pre-recorded videos. There's over 100 of them now of different content, so urge you to do that. I've also been blogging on the ParkinsonSecrets.com blog with Mike Oken to try to give you guys information about different aspects of Parkinson's, and some of the speakers that we've had on the series have come on and done the same. We also have, the importance of trying to find ways to socially connect you. And so I've not been just talking about this. I've actually been putting this to good use in my own life, as I have been disconnected from my own family. So urging people to do online support groups, online exercise groups, perhaps online religious classes, things like that. And I've been doing a Zoom family time with my parents every week. My parents live in Canada. They've been sheltering in place. We finally got to see them after a year and a half of the pandemic. My nephew and my niece live in 2 other cities. And so every week we do an hour Zoom. So it's been kind of great. We just submitted a couple of abstracts. Just wanted to give you a couple more tips. So this is the question that seemed to be the highest yield. Do you sometimes or often feel left out? Is the top screening questionnaire for loneliness out of the UCLA loneliness questions. And then in terms of what we're recommending clinicians try to tell the patients, these are pretty simple. I think getting out of the house most days of the week can actually bode well in terms of your quality of life from this perspective. Connecting with someone daily, either through phone or video modalities, has been shown to be helpful. And then other things that we've already mentioned, online support groups, joining a group or club. It doesn't have to be a support group. Online exercise classes, yoga, Tai Chi, all of these things can be helpful. I wanted to just spend 1 minute talking about caregivers. So it's not just about caring for the patient with Parkinson's, but also thinking about the caregiver and supporting them as well. I know there's a series in this conference about that as well. So just like that oxygen mask analogy, in order to take care of other people, you have to put your own mask on first. I really urge you to think about yourselves as caregivers and drizzle in some of these wellness strategies as well. This year, I'm on scholarship doing this contemplative fellowship. I'm really excited to learn more about the mind-body approaches. And so stay tuned. I'll be learning about that in next year. This is a fellowship run out of the New York Zen Center, trying to teach healthcare providers a little bit about using some of these mind-body practices. So I'm really excited to do that. I just want to give a shout out to some of our patients across the world. It's really because of you that we do the work that we do. If you're a Parkinson's patient, I urge you to join the PD Avengers, and also you read this book, Ending Parkinson's Disease. I think it's very transformational. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. It's been a sheer pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you across the pond here. I'm a big Anglophile, and it's just, really an amazing honor and privilege to speak to you. Thank you so much. Be well.
Thank you, Dr. Subramanian. I'd like next to introduce Suzanne Bourne, co-founder and head of care support at Mobilize Care Limited. Suzanne will focus on well-being for carers and loved ones of people with Parkinson's. Suzanne, over to you.
Hello there, and thank you. Lovely to be here with you all, and thank you for inviting me to come and share my thoughts with you on self-management for family and carers of people living with Parkinson's. Let me share a little bit of a presentation for you. There we go. So talking today about self-management for family and carers of people living with Parkinson's. But first, a little bit about me. I'll introduce you to who I am and hopefully what qualifies me to come along and talk about this. So my name is Suzanne. I'm head of carer support for an organisation called Mobilize, and co-founder for this organisation too. we're supporting unpaid carers across the UK using digital tools. But probably more importantly, I'm also wife to my husband, Matt, who was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease about 18 years ago. We'd been married for about a year, and that's when we got the news. It was spotted very early on. We're quite lucky with this. It wasn't a big sort of agonizing wait to understand what was going wrong. It's very mild symptoms. And so our journey began. And at the time, I never really thought, well, I'm going to be a carer now, or I'm going to be looking after my husband with Parkinson's. It took quite a while in those first couple of years to understand what was going on there and why it was important. We've since had two lovely girls. They're now teenagers, so we've survived that and still going strong. We're into A-levels now with one of them, and she's looking to train to be a nurse after A-levels, so something's inspired something along the lines there. And fortunately, December last year, Matt was able to have DBS brain surgery as well. So it's been a real roller coaster journey through different symptoms, different medication, different side effects, and different stages of Parkinson's. But we've been, the good news is, whatever I'm about to tell you, the good news is we've landed on another high, that the DBS procedure was really successful, and it's been quite life-changing for both of us, actually. Okay, so on with our little presentation. So that was about me. There was going to be a photo of my husband here, but I couldn't find one that he was willing for me to share. Neither of us are particularly photogenic when it comes to photos. So I'm also working, as well as being a mum and caring for my husband to some degree at certain points, I also work as a coach, working with individuals one-to-one. Most of that work is with carers. And as I said, co-founder of Mobilise. So we've been keeping ourselves busy over the last 18 years or so. What am I going to talk about today? I'm going to tell you a little bit about what self-management is and why I think it's relevant, even if you're not the person with Parkinson's. A lot is talked about self-management for people with long-term conditions, but let's look at it a bit more broadly. We'll look at a little bit about what the research says about self-management. I'm going to tell you about what works for me, because that's the bit I'm an expert in. But also, as a coach and someone supporting other people who are living with long-term conditions, I'd love to get you started on your own self-management today as part of this. But don't worry, you can just join in at home, and hopefully we'll catch up in the Q&A session later on, and we'll be able to have a bit more of a conversation about that as well. So, self-management, and why is it important? Well, let's look at what it is. So this is our own definition. Now, this came up from Parkinson's UK. I worked for Parkinson's UK for a while, developing their self-management program, particularly taking it online and looking at how we support carers with it. So it was exciting work to be doing. And we came up with the definition, co-produced by people with Parkinson's, that self-management is working out and doing what you personally can in order to take control, live positively, and achieve a quality of life that is meaningful to you. So when someone is diagnosed with a long-term condition and there are a limited number of treatments and it's a long journey ahead, self-management can be a really important part of how you live your life and how you get a good quality of life. So quite often people will embrace these kind of ideas. And we really realised as we're delivering this programme just how important it was for carers as well, for partners, for other family members to join that journey, not just to support the person with Parkinson's, but also for themselves. Because for those of you that are living with someone with Parkinson's, you are living with the condition as well. It's impacted your life. And if we try and bury our head in the sand and pretend otherwise, which is quite often a good strategy for a couple of years, to be fair, but we're never going to make any progress. We're going to feel quite stuck and feel like kind of the why me. And so I feel it's important to take control of what you can, to think about the things that are important to you, and sort of make some sort of progress there that matters to you, and journey in this together. And if you're both doing it together, taking these self-management approaches, you can also kind of motivate each other. You'll kind of give each other that little kick up the bum to keep going, that bit of shared purpose and shared goal. So it's fantastic to approach it together. But if your other half or the family member that has Parkinson's isn't ready for that, you can get going on your own as well. Don't wait for them. You can get started with this. So your let me make sure this isn't blocking things. There we go. So research about self-management, does it really help? Does it really make a difference? I say it does, but don't take my word for it. Self-management as a principle, as a discipline, there's been some research into it. I've sort of put some links there. So it's recognised its value in supporting people with long-term health conditions. That's pretty well documented. People have done studies and evidence that. Less so with carers specifically. So here I look at sort of self-management tools that carers use, the kind of the package of stuff that people use. A big thing is about how carers build resilience, so carers and family members building resilience. The expert in that is Dr. Warren Donnellan at the University of Liverpool. He's done lots of studies into care partners and family members, mostly focusing on people with dementia, but he's also worked with us at Mobilise to look at a broader range of people who are supporting someone else with a long-term condition and disabilities and other illnesses. And we produced a report together in the July around 2020, looking at that first chunk of COVID lockdown and carers that had accessed various different services, in particular our kind of CUPPers, and how carers had built resilience around making connections with other people, building community and learning from each other, which are all kind of key parts of, or potentially key parts of a self-management journey. So the research is out there for those that like it. And what about me? It's much more interesting to talk about real life people, isn't it, sometimes? What about me? What works for me? Well, the most important thing, first of all, was about working out what is important to me. So doing things like, for me, I'm a big fan of a life wheel, sitting down, working out, sort of breaking my life down into chunks. What actually matters? What are the key things in my life? And what do I want to change? Otherwise, it's very easy to kind of dive straight into, oh, I need to look after my health. I need to do this. I need to do that. What matters to you? What do you really want to do? That's going to make it much more motivating to work on your self-management. We don't want to make this a chore. So one of the things was to maintain a focus and priority on my own health. Sounds obvious, but when you spend a lot of time booking appointments, picking up prescriptions, going to doctor's appointments, driving to the hospital, etc., quite often the sense of doing some of that for yourself goes to the bottom of the list. But, really recognizing how, we're in this for the long term and we've got to look after our own health in order to be there to do this journey together, and how that sets kind of that role modeling thing as well. So focus on that. So whether it be medical appointments, getting your teeth checked, exercise and diet, relaxation, all of those things around your well-being. Whatever really matters to you there, whatever's really important. For me, another big thing that's helped with my self-management I've discovered is being part of a network of people who are experiencing something similar. So when I worked at Parkinson's UK, and before that as a volunteer, I was able to sort of meet in groups of other people who just recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's or are further down the line. We've set up our own, or we've become part of a very informal network of younger people with Parkinson's that just meet in a pub once a month and have a WhatsApp group to share a few funny things every now and then. And it's kind of very light touch and humorous, but we're there for each other when the times are tough. But also, one thing I've found really helpful, some of you will know Sue Whips, who runs various different initiatives, but one of them is a Facebook group for partners of people with Parkinson's. It's not restricted to just partners. There are sons and daughters and brothers and sisters and people as well. But if you're partnering with someone with Parkinson's, it's the ideal place. And that's been really helpful because it's helped me to look at the more difficult symptoms, the more challenging things that nobody really wants to talk about, and to be able to find a safe space to talk about those things, to recognize I'm not alone, and to pick up some hints and tips. The number of people that have advised, get your OT round, have some help with that. Stop getting up in the night 5 times to help them turn over. Let's look at other things that can help. So actually looking at how that's going to help you from your perspective. And so often we tackle all the problems from the perspective of the person with Parkinson's, and that might have a positive knock-on effect with us, but sometimes switching it around and looking after yourself first can actually help and find some solutions too. And they can be quite simple things too. So that network is super, super powerful. So partners of people with Parkinson's on Facebook. Sue says, yes, fine to let people know about it. It is a closed group. So if you join, just check your messages in Facebook, because Sue and her administrators are really careful to make sure this is the right group for you. And it's a really well-moderated group. So forget everything you think about Facebook and how irritating it can be. There's some really great communities out there. Or spending time with people who have nothing to do with Parkinson's. That's been super important for me, particularly when I was working for Parkinson's UK, and now I'm working with a lot of carers. Just getting out with the girls, people from antenatal group, my local friends, and people that have nothing to do with Parkinson's. We don't sit and talk about it all day. Let's not let life become all about Parkinson's. Or saying yes to help and support. I don't know how you are with this one, but it was the tough one. When we had our first baby, we wanted to do it all ourselves. How daft, anyone with a child, get some help. Let your parents help out. Let the grandparents get involved. And it was tough going. Matt couldn't change nappies. He was really worried about holding a baby. And, it was tough times, but he was still trying to work at the same time. And that was really important to him. So we just kind of battled on for a bit. Second baby, my mum was older and wiser. She just moved in. And she just moved in, and I didn't realise she had little bags in it. There was a small bag. I didn't know how she'd lasted so long, but she just came in with other bags. So if you've got help, say yes to it. Because when you say no, people will take that as a permanent answer. They might not keep checking. So if nobody's helping you, did you say no about 5 years ago? Because that's the answer. They're still listening. So sometimes we need to ask for it. And we need to say, not now, but can you check back with me later? Can you see how I'm doing? But I think I'm all right for now. And maybe embrace it later. And you might also need help and support from your community, from friends and family, from others in your family. The girls have had to learn. I can't do it all. I'm not super mum. We all have to muck in and help out. I think that does them a huge amount of good. I like to think. And but also, whether we're going to need help from carers, whether that be paid, social services and social care, the sooner you start thinking about those things and having the conversation, the easier it is to make those steps. And things like, well, for me, working was really important. And you can't do it all, and nobody can. And actually, so to sort of look after the girls, to care for Matt and some of the needs that he's had over the years, we said, well, actually, if I can earn money, then let's pay to have someone come and do the cleaning. Let's pay now to have someone come and do the gardening. And it feels, it's a bit kind of like, well, this is my home and this person's not going to do it as well as me. Believe me, if you're not getting the job done, then someone else doing something is going to be a big hand. You can help. You can always do things to your very high standards if you want. But I don't live up to my own high standards. So why would I let someone else do that? And actually, after a few years, we found someone who's pretty awesome. And that same lady, when we were in coronavirus lockdown, was happy to go and get us shopping if we needed things. She's was our person on the outside for things. And she's someone I'll call when I need help further down the line as well. So good to know we've got that help. But you have to embrace it, give it a go. But think about, by having that help, what does that release for you? Does that mean you can do your own thing? You can take part in hobbies, you can have relaxing time, you can spend time with friends and family, you can just chill out and read a book. Whatever those things are, if they're important to you, you've got to make space for them. Otherwise, that space isn't going to just happen. And talking. I have no problem talking, obviously, but talking to someone about how things are is really important, both for both of you in this situation with Parkinson's. I think we got ourselves in a bit of a stew at one point where neither of us had quite admitted how tough life was and how difficult things were, and we didn't want to upset the other one. And eventually it all came out. Of course, there were tears, they were mine, but eventually we kind of came to this decision that we can't do this. We can't just keep things bottled up, but sometimes it might be difficult to talk to each other first about it. So we agreed, who could we go and talk to that we kind of felt, I'm not being disloyal, but sometimes it's easier to go and talk to this person. Or for Matt, he will kind of use WhatsApp and text messages to talk to his friend as well. And it's okay if that's the first time we've started that conversation. But also, professionals as well, whether it's working with a coach to help you move through and move forward, whether it's working with a counsellor or therapeutic services to help you unpick some of the things. There's quite often a lot of things like guilt, regret, anger, irritation, and it might bring up things from your past as well. So some counselling might be the right thing to help you move through those things, to really be able to process those feelings. And, also just, if you've hit that exhaustion and that burnout, you're going to need some support to get through that. So talking is really important. And it comes back in the loop, because this is not a one-time job. This is a constant process of adjusting and evaluating and spotting when perhaps you haven't got it quite in balance. It's never going to be perfectly in balance. But, when things are heading off in one direction, you're just finding yourself a bit more irritable than usual. Perhaps that's my key sign, when I start wittering away to myself in my head and things like that. So those different things that are going to kind of help you along that journey. So that's me. What about you? Let's have a look, or let's see what else could be done. So your next step, if you were going to give self-management a try, now there are NHS programs and different things you can join. You might find a self-management groups and things like that. It might not call it self-management, embrace things like self-care, spending other time in group workshop and things like that. These bits will all add up together. But the first thing is about finding a space to take a moment to step back and just kind of pause life a little bit. So this might be about putting some time in your diary, going along to a group session, chatting to a friend. And what you're doing with that time is just creating some space to think about what's important to you, what really matters in life. So you can use a tool like a life wheel. It's just like a wheel divided into 8 sections. You decide what's important and sort of chunk out your life a little bit and reflect on each of those things. You can work on that with a coach or in a group or just individually or with a friend. If there's someone else in a similar situation, you could kind of help each other through this process. Having someone listen to you that's just going to listen to you through this process, not try and tell you what to do, not try and give you the solutions, not go, oh yeah, that's bad for me as well, but just listen to you and accept you as you work through this process and think about what's important to you. Connecting with others, whether it's as part of this process or as part of your solution, it's going to be different for everybody. Not everybody, quite a lot of people who are would identify as being quite introverted, they don't like to spend a lot of time doing that. It uses up a lot of energy. It's not always something they enjoy, but there's having purpose in those connections. Actually, is this someone that's going to listen to me? Is this someone I'm going to have fun with? Is this a group that I'm going to learn from and we're going to exchange information or support each other along the way? Just make sure it's that right people and the right group for you. We can't always choose all of our friends and family, but when it comes to your self-management, it's good to sort of make some conscious decisions about what works for you. You might have some great friends that are great for going out with. They're good for, when the Prosecco needs to pop, there they are. They're great to spend time with, but perhaps they don't listen that well. Perhaps that's not their thing. Don't try and turn them into good listeners. Find that from somewhere else. Sometimes that's what's needed. And work out what meaningful self-care looks like for you. So self-care and self-management are quite sort of, little bit interchangeable, but self-care is that real looking after you stuff. And a lot of people just push this idea away because, they think of bubble baths or mindfulness or meditation, and maybe that's not their thing. If they are, though, those can be really helpful things. Use them. Fantastic things. But it's about working out what actually works for you. So for me, self-care oscillates between being on my own, completely doing nothing, absolutely in a kind of prayerful space for me is, but, just taking myself completely into a quiet and calm place, to actually being completely distracted, having fun with really fun people and being out there having a good giggle, going to, watching a comedy show together, going to the cinema together, just, even on a Zoom call, having a glass or something on a Friday night together. That was as good as it got in lockdown. But doing those kinds of things, what is it that self-care looks like for you? For some people, it's going to work. That actually having that break of going to work is really important, having that balance and that mixture of things. So do work out. People do journaling, people do creative arts and things like that. People write poetry. Poetry, completely not my thing. But find out what really works for you. And if it doesn't work, don't dismiss all of it. It's working through what works for you. So the next steps is to make a plan. So just thinking now, as you've listened to this presentation, what are the things that you're thinking, there was something in what she said there. There's something I'd like to grasp there. There's something I'd like to do. Or maybe it's thinking, well, it'd be lovely to sit down quietly and think of all these things. Well, you've just spent 20 minutes or so with me. It is possible, like a date in your diary, like a webinar or an interesting thing you're going to attend, it's possible to put that time aside. And maybe that's your first step to say, when I put the kettle on tomorrow morning, that's what I'm going to do in that little quiet time in the morning before I jump into everything. Or I'm going to get up a little bit earlier that day just to do that. Please don't get in the habit of doing these things in the middle of the night. I know we get that time sometimes, but if you start using that time, your body will start thinking this is a time to be awake and thinking and stop sleeping. So watch out for that one. There we go. So I really hope you'll embrace some of these things. This is me. I talked about Mobilise as well. So Mobilise are a community of carers. We meet online. We have a Facebook group, and we have online cuppers and things like that as well. And there's lots of useful resources. That's available free across the UK. The big thing for a lot of people is they don't see themselves as carers. And that's certainly not language that we'd use at home and use with our family. But just recognising that sometimes might open up different forms of support and different types of community. Sharing a few links with you there, and I'm sure they'll be available afterwards. I'm sure that the magic of the team will make those things available. Do connect with me on Twitter and LinkedIn. Always happy to chat about things. Do check out what's available on Mobilise, and there's our Facebook group. But I've also put in there Sue Whips's Partners of People with Parkinson's. To be honest, if you are living with somebody or supporting someone with Parkinson's, that's the gold standard of Facebook groups. But I'd recommend the Mobilise one as well for that more general discussion about caring and that caring journey as well. So lots of choice there for you, whatever works for you. There we go. Right. There we are. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening in as I jabber on. And it'd be really great for people to join us in the Q&A session later to talk about, what you thought of this, any questions you have, your comments. That's what makes it much more vibrant. And what kind of things do you think you're already noticing that you're doing around self-management, and what approaches have you seen? It'd be lovely to know what's happening locally. I know in Scotland, there's a lot of self-management initiatives as well, but it's something we can do on our own or just initiate ourselves as well. So we do embrace it. But thank you, everybody. Lovely to be here, and see you soon.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. That was really powerful stuff and plenty to think about. So thank you.
100 miles an hour, sorry.
No, that was great. I look forward to hearing the thoughts and questions from our attendees, and we'll see you again very soon in the live Q&A session.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you. Take care.
Our final speaker in today's session on Tactics for Living Well will be Tim Hague, who's a speaker, author, executive director of U-Turn Parkinson's, and co-founder of the PD Avengers. Over to you, Tim.
Hello, my name is Tim Hague Sr. I am the founder and executive director of U-Turn Parkinson's, a wellness center here in Winnipeg, Canada. I am a professional speaker and author, and I am the winner of the first season of The Amazing Race Canada. I was diagnosed at the age of 46 some 10 years ago with Parkinson's, and I'm a PD Avenger. I would like to thank Liz Nash and the other organizers of ParkCon today for inviting me to speak. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and I hope that you all enjoy what looks like to be a very interesting and fascinating day. Well, recently I wrote a blog on having passed my 10th anniversary with Parkinson's and some of the lessons I've learned along the way. I'd like to read an excerpt from that blog for you. The number one lesson I've learned over the past 10 years is this: it's all about me. Contrary to what Mom taught us, I believe this conversation is indeed all about me. It's not about the next cure, it's about me. It's not about the next breakthrough, it's about me. It's not about the next great scientific marvel, it is indeed about me. Now, I know that this will come across as maybe a strange way to start a conversation about Parkinson's, but I think that you'll come to see my point, and that in the end you will agree with me that it is indeed all about me. There are a few things that we can control when it comes to Parkinson's. We can't control that we have the disease. We can't just shake it off and hang it up anytime that we please. However, once we move beyond this initial acceptance of this reality, we discover that we do have control over the next and most important aspect of the disease. We can control how we choose to live with it. And this comes down to our attitudes. My movement disorder specialist played a critical role in shaping my attitudes right from the beginning. He said to me, "Tim, you're in as good a shape as you are today with PD because of how well you've looked after yourself all these years." He followed that up with a statement, "If there is any one thing I could do for all of my patients, I would make them athletes." Well, these words motivated me and ultimately led me to the conclusion that our pursuit of wellness is indeed the cornerstone in our quest to end Parkinson's. For you see, without a healthy community, there will be far too few to take part in research studies, to advocate, to raise funds, and to give leadership. Now, I know that some of you are smiling, even smirking. I can hear your eyes rolling around in your head, and I can even hear your thoughts. And some of you are saying, what? Me, an athlete? Not a chance. Oh yeah, you indeed, an athlete. Well, what is an athlete? Google the word and you'll get a broad range of definitions that encompass this thought. Someone who has been trained to compete, generally in sports. Daily, you and I are in competition with Parkinson's. Will it let me walk today? Will it let me stand, write, type, think clearly, and on and on? We daily make decisions. How much can I push back? How much pain can I take? What will PD get today? What will I take back? Like an athlete, we surround ourselves with coaches, trainers, counselors, nutritionists, physicians, a broad team of specialists whose only goal is to get us to the finish line as champions. We set goals, we refine plans, we adjust routines, we adapt, we change, but we remain laser focused on the ultimate goal. We learn to do things that we've never done before, like sports. Many of my fellow athletes at U-Turn Parkinson's never exercised a day prior to being diagnosed. Now they have made the mantra, exercise is medicine, a part of their DNA, and daily prove their athleticism. They have changed who they are so that they might become who they want to be. To be clear, our pursuit is not purely in the physical realm. Like any other world-class athlete, we control what makes its way onto our daily calendars. We are continually learning and improving our knowledge of our competition and our game. We ensure that we surround ourselves with a community of family and friends who support us, and we give special care to our emotional and spiritual well-being. In short, we continually train ourselves for the daily competition we wage with PD. We are indeed athletes, and Parkinson's is our World Series, our Stanley Cup, our World Cup, our Super Bowl, and the trophy we are competing for is our very lives. As athletes in this context, we have the added bonus that not only is doping legal, it's encouraged. Now, to be a world-class athlete, one necessarily needs to be fairly narcissistic, self-centered, and inwardly focused. You have to look after your needs as an athlete if you're ever going to make a podium finish. As an athlete, we have committed to eating well, and not just whatever we want. We have committed to responsible drinking, to controlling our calendars, and training when we should, not just when we feel like it. As athletes, we have committed ourselves to goals, ideals, and a first-place spot on a podium that will not be accomplished otherwise. Lest our analogy wane, let's consider what some of the real-life goals, ideals, and podiums look like. Well, they're things like to retain our relationships with our spouses, children, and friends, to stay in the workforce for as long as possible, to maintain self-care as much as possible, to reduce dependence on medication, and to travel more. These are just a few of the real-life goals that we're training for. We long to be champions in the eyes of those we love. We long to hold the #1 spot in the hearts of those who love us. This requires a dedicated pursuit of wellness. So you've never thought of yourself in these terms, right? Where do we go from here? What do we do now? Well, in its most simplistic form, Nike had it right. Just do it. Okay, yes, I see the stunned, dazed, and glazed over eyes. I get it. I can see that some of you are thinking, he's serious. He wants me to be an athlete. And you're right, I am serious. I want you to be an athlete. But just breathe with me here for a second. Just calm down, take a big deep breath. This is possible. It is doable. We have all been told this many times that we should exercise and for so long that I fear many of us have slipped into a catatonic state of inaction, that we just simply are frozen and don't know where to begin. We've heard the statistics, we've sat through research seminars, we've heard words like alpha-synuclein and mitochondria, we've learned about the substantia nigra, and we've seen the brain sliced and diced in so many different ways that we never imagined. We have been exposed to things since being diagnosed that high school biology class never even remotely prepared us for. And then someone will throw in at the end of the statement, and oh, you should be active. You should probably be doing some exercise. It has been proven to be the second most effective way in mitigating your symptoms and slowing, if not outright stopping the disease. So yeah, you should probably be active. What? Here's my point. I don't want to tell you to go be active. I want to say to you, come with me. Come with us. Allow us to help you change your life. We will help you in your pursuit of wellness. We will help you become a PD athlete. At U-Turn Parkinson's, we take a different approach. We just do it. We don't just talk about it. We don't just read the research. We don't encourage you to go do it. We go do it and encourage you to come with us. So what is it we are doing? What are we encouraging you to do? What is this pursuit of wellness that I'm talking about? Well, wellness is not just one particular thing. It is so much more than me running the amazing race. It's more than just physical exercise. The definition that I like is this: an active process through which people live healthy lives in both body and mind. You immediately see that it's more than just physical exercise and that it's an all-encompassing process. Taken from the National Wellness Institute, there are 6 areas of wellness that we focus on. They together spell POISE, P-O-I-S-S-E. That is one extra S, but we'll deal with it. First of all, that P is for physical, of course. The care of and challenging of our physical bodies. And this is where I want to introduce you to Empower You through uturnparkinsons.org. Empower You is our online community where if you have no access locally, you have no one to work out with, Coach Danielle will lead you every week live online through a workout program to help keep you active and pursuing wellness. The care of our physical bodies comes down to that 150 minutes a week, 5 days a week for 30 minutes per day of moderate to intense exercise. The goal here is to be sweating, to get your heart rate up and to be sweating a little bit. We know, science has proven to us that it will slow the disease, that we will feel better, we will live better if we will exercise. This will look different for all of us. We all won't do the same level of intensity, we all won't do necessarily the same things, but it's important that you are active. That's the physical. The O is occupational. Odd word for us, but nonetheless we define that as how you fill your day, the things that you do with your day, what makes it onto your calendar, and are they healthy? Intellectual, the challenging of our minds, reading, crossword puzzles. I'm trying to learn some Spanish for Barcelona in 2023. The World Parkinson's Congress is coming up. I plan on being there, and so I hope to be a little conversant. At the rate I'm going, I'm not going to make it, but maybe. We'll keep trying. Social, U-Turn Parkinson's has online social support groups, along with lots of other things that provide the social aspect of life. But this is connecting with friends, family, support groups, running clubs, workout buddies, all those ways to find connection so that you have people building into your lives and that you stay socially engaged. Then spiritual, answering the big questions of life. Why am I here? Why did I get Parkinson's? Why has this happened to me? And having someone to help you work through those questions. And last but not least is the emotional, caring for our mental health. It spells poise. And poise is an old word we may not remember well, but if you look up its definition, it means to be balanced. And a synonym for poise is control. And isn't this exactly what we are looking for? Are we not looking for an equilibrium, a balance, some measure of control over our shaky lives? The pursuit of wellness offers us this opportunity. Do you want to find success within Parkinson's? Do you want to live well with this disease? Then commit to becoming an athlete. Commit to the pursuit of wellness. Allow U-Turn Parkinson's to empower you in your pursuit of wellness. It's not only the best thing that you can do for yourself, but it is the best thing you can do for our community. I'm often reminded of that little speech given on every airplane prior to takeoff, where we are told in no uncertain terms that we are to be self-centered, narcissistic, and wholly inwardly focused. We are told that in the event of loss of pressure in the cabin, that oxygen masks will fall from the panels above. And that when they do, we are then told to ensure that we put our masks on first, before helping that cute, helpless little child next to you. Well, why are we asked to do this? Because if we pass out from a lack of oxygen, we are of no use to anyone and will likely be an even greater burden, especially to that little kid who's now trapped beside you. Do you understand? Do you see where I'm going with this? Do you see now that this journey has to be all about me? Without the pursuit of wellness, without a commitment to becoming a PD athlete, Parkinson's likely wins. Without a healthy me, there really is nothing else. Without a healthy me, there is no advocacy work. Without a healthy me, there is no research trials. Without a healthy me, there really isn't much reason to care if treatments or a cure are found. For a PD cure will not fix a body that has been abandoned and uncared for. What value is it if I wake up cured of PD only to find that it has already destroyed my relationships with my spouse, partner, and children? We must choose to fight for our wellness today. If we are to ever meet the challenge of finding a cure tomorrow and reaping its rewards. To be crystal clear, when I say it's all about me, I really mean we. When I say we, I really mean us. And when I say us, I really mean you. If you don't make this all about you, we will not succeed in ending Parkinson's. We each have superpowers that we bring to the table, skills and abilities that are needed in conquering this disease. If you do not take care of yourself, we will at best be severely limited in our response and very possibly outright unsuccessful. We are each needed in meeting the needs of our community so that we can together end Parkinson's. So now will you say it with me, please? It really is all about me. Now come on. Say it. Let me hear you, nice and loud. It really is all about me. My name is Tim Hague Sr. Come with me. Become a PD athlete and learn to live your best. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today, day 2 of ParkOn. We hope you've had a great day and have enjoyed all of our sessions. I'm Liz Nash, the Research Support Network Manager at Parkinson's UK, and I'm very pleased to be joined live for our panel Q&A session by Suzanne Bourne, Head of Carer Support at Mobilize, and also Tim Hague, one of the founding members of the PD Avengers and U-Turn Parkinson's. So it's really great to have both of you on the call, Suzanne and Tim. We've had some really good questions coming in from our audience, and I will start off with a question from Matt, if that's all right with both of you. So Matt asks, do you think there is an urgent need to update what we teach medical students about Parkinson's so the old, outdated view of Parkinson's isn't perpetuated? I think this is in relation to something Dr. Subramanian said in her talk, but perhaps you have some thoughts on this as well. I don't know, Suzanne, maybe I could come to you first and then Tim.
Yeah, definitely. I think it starts at the very beginning of people's medical careers, doesn't it? So people start to spot it, are expecting it in younger people, not just in older people, and that that there can be quite a positive message that there are things we can do to help and approaches that will help. But also speaking to lots of people in the medical community, there are lots of people that have very up to date thinking about Parkinson's, and it's very current at the moment. But it's important that continues as people come through.
And Tim, anything to add? I just had a panic that I didn't introduce you as Tim Hague, so I apologize if I said it wrong. I don't know. Oh, good.
All good. Thank you, Matt, for the question. My simple answer would be yes. How often do we hear things that are just so extremely dated, and that anything we can do to update our colleagues in the medical field would be a benefit to all of us?
Thank you. I have a question here from Alan. It's for you, Suzanne. Do you think there needs to be more research looking specifically at the experience of carers, and what kinds of studies might you like to see?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful. There are gaps in the research out there, and I think it would be really helpful to have a longitudinal study of the impact of Parkinson's on a partner of someone with Parkinson's, someone living through it, to really recognise that. Because I think a lot of partners and carers go around thinking, well, I'm not the one that's got it. Why is this, it shouldn't be affecting me. It's all about them and I need to support them, and not recognising the impact it's having on themselves. And that's normal, that's okay. And it's something you can get help and support with. It's not just something you have to put up with. So I think the research that would help to show what happens to people and also the kinds of interventions that will help and support people be really valuable.
Thank you. We have a question or comment from Neil, but we can pose it as a question. So we've heard a lot today about loneliness and its impact on well-being, self-management, lots of important things for living better with the condition. And clearly this is a message that we need to get out to the wider Parkinson's community, particularly those who might feel isolated post-diagnosis. And a challenge to us all is, how can we get this message out to everyone affected by Parkinson's? And Tim, maybe that's something you might like to comment on, please.
Sure. Well, I think first of all, we encourage all of our local bodies that we work with, whether it be a Parkinson's group or care group or whomever, to be talking about these kind of things from their vantage point, because they often have a large network that they can reach more from. I think it's equally important that we each are telling our stories. I think we sometimes minimize the fact that, well, I'm not very loud, I don't have a very big network, I don't have thousands of people on my social media accounts. But that's not what's important. I think what's important is every one of us telling our stories to our people, whether that be a big group, a small group, or one person. That you never know who you're going to impact through that. And that those two things are probably the first and foremost that I would suggest. And then third, I can't let a question like this go by without saying we need to be a part of the PD Avengers and help globally spread these messages around the world. And that as we do that collectively, our individual voices grow immeasurably.
That leads really nicely into another question in the chat. Is there a PD Avengers group in the UK? And if so, how might we be able to access it? And actually, we do have, if you go to the Take Action page, which is at the top of your screen, we link you to the PD Avengers website. So I believe you can sign up there. And Tim, you might have something to add for a UK-based group.
We have lots of folks in the UK who are PD Avengers. The leaders, the most people in the PD Avengers right now are coming from the UK, United States, and Canada. Matt Eagles, who asked a couple questions and who's online here, is a fantastic member of the PD Avengers. You can always reach out to him. But go to that link, find us at pdavengers.org, and we would love to tell you more about how to become a PD Avenger, a global alliance to end Parkinson's disease.
Thanks very much. And Suzanne, back to Neil's original question, how can we get some of these really important messages out into the wider Parkinson's community, especially reaching those who might feel lonely or isolated?
Yeah, quite often the onus is put on at the point of diagnosis for a clinician to signpost people to things. And I think that's a really helpful first step. And I know Parkinson's UK and the Excellent Network work hard on that. But quite often at that point, you're a bit overwhelmed, you don't know what you need, and you don't know what's going to be helpful to you in the future. So it's important that, as Tim says, that ongoing conversation, people's stories, they're there on social media, that we're talking to people and we're spreading that word in the places that people hang out every day, whether it's Facebook, whether it's on YouTube, that people are seeing that kind of stuff out there. And that power of a single connection, probably every couple of weeks, I get a little message dropped into my text messages or my inbox saying, "Hi, Suzanne, I've just met someone else who's got a partner with someone with Parkinson's. Would you meet up for a coffee with them?" And so that informal network is equally important, but great to be able to point to really useful resources that we think will help that particular person rather than overwhelming them with everything that's out there. It's finding the right things for you is really helpful too.
Thank you. And Becky asks, why don't we get told about all of this from our specialists, our GPs, our neurologists? So I imagine she's referring to all of the really helpful tips and concepts you've talked about today. How do we educate them to include all of this as part of our care plan? And she says, after all, with apathy, we need help to stick with the groups, the diets, the exercise when it gets hard. We often need a reminder of how important this is. So how can we help educate our healthcare professionals to be more proactive in supporting us with our well-being? Maybe I'll come to you first, Tim.
Well, that's a big question. There's lots of things we could suggest, I suppose, but it's always hard to get inside a particular group of the medical community and see real change there. I think I would turn it a bit and say, instead of just focusing on educating them, which ultimately we need to do, we really need to educate ourselves on what we need. And then really, really do work at changing our attitudes, that we can do this. We can build a team. You can be that PD athlete that has the doctor, who may not be all the doctor you want him or her to be, but who can be a good member of your team. And then the OT and the PT, the nutritionist, and all those people who can help you live well with this disease now. And as you go, be confident to speak to them, to tell them what you need, what they're missing, and encourage them on a one-to-one basis to buck up a little bit, to get better at what they do. Because these are the things that you need as their client, their patient, and that they're important to you.
Thank you, Tim. And Suzanne, anything that you might like to add on that one?
I think, our number of medical appointments we have can not be that great sometimes. So there's a lot to cover in those things. And quite often we go in with that need for medical advice and medical tips. And so therefore, that's what we're given. So sometimes I think we can push more for that. We can ask more about approaches that would help. So somehow kind of sending us in ready with those questions. And I know Sue would be a big champion of this, that we're kind of ready to say, actually, what else do you know that's going on locally? Where can you point me? Who do you know that's managing this well? I think that can help. But just recognizing each appointment goes by in a flash, and we need to be proactive all around that appointment too. And care identification when you're not caring yet, you're just part of this thing that's happening. There's a big journey there to make around sort of, do you know what, this is going to impact you, and have you thought about what support might be right for you? That might be a helpful question.
Thank you. I think we have time for just two more quick questions, so one for each of you. Firstly, Suzanne, Neil asks, is Mobilize just for the Parkinson's community, or is it for all carers?
Mobilize is for all carers. Yeah, it was my initial starting point, was helping people, people with Parkinson's, but it's for all carers, even if you don't call yourself a carer.
That's great. And you can find the links to Mobilize website and Facebook community from your further reading link in the agenda. And Tim, does PD Avengers support research? Mark asks.
Absolutely. Our three pillars are wellness, advocacy, and research. We believe that people with Parkinson's, patients need to become integral in every aspect of research, and we are committed to seeing people with Parkinson's and our voices being heard right from the beginning of a research project, right through the development of drugs or wherever that research goes. We are absolutely committed to research and believe that it's absolutely essential. Now I spend my time on the wellness side. So we've got to keep you well so that you can get to that research project. You can help us get there. So make sure you're exercising, make sure you're eating well, change your attitude, become a PD athlete so that we can make sure that our voices are heard in every aspect of research and advocacy.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you again, Suzanne and Tim, for your really inspiring talks today, and also to Dr. Subramanian, who unfortunately wasn't able to join us this afternoon for the Q&A. But it's been great hearing from all of you, really interesting and thought-provoking stuff, and we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce the chair of the Board of Trustees at Parkinson's UK, Gary Shaughnessy, and he's going to close the day with some reflections on day 2 of ParkOn. So over to you, Gary.
Thanks, Liz, and thanks, Tim and Suzanne as well. I thought that was really interesting, the Q&A session. As someone living with Parkinson's, I wanted to add my reflections on day 2 of ParkOn, and I think particularly what I've seen here is how practical and useful the discussions have been, when maybe the expectation might be that this was all about, theoretical issues or the future, and not just practical, but about the here and now rather than just about the future itself. So I think that's been really helpful and really good for someone in my situation who is always looking for what's the steps that I can take to control my version of Parkinson's. And I think particularly understanding exercise that you can enjoy, but also this whole concept of how do we socially connect, how do we interact, and how do we understand that you can be someone with lots of connections and lots of friends, but you can still be very lonely. And I think some of the subjects raised on that, I think, are really important. My other observation, and there are plenty of examples of this from people such as Matt on the call, is how people can make a real difference by refusing to be limited by thinking about Parkinson's as something of inevitable decline. And I think that's a really important part of understanding how both things like exercise and social connection link in with how you deal with your own personal Parkinson's. And I think the opportunity to share that understanding is really valuable. I'd like to thank all of the speakers from today's sessions for their time and for their insights. I'd like to thank the volunteers, particularly those who've been affected by this condition, who are at the heart of designing the programme around ParkOn and have been instrumental in making sure that the agenda really does make some sense and fits together. Finally, I would like to well, not quite finally, but I would like to encourage you to join tomorrow's session for a focus on the future and where we're going. I particularly have a bias as to why I think you should join it, because I'm part of tomorrow's session myself. So I'd really like to see you again tomorrow and have the opportunity to share some of the thoughts that I think you'll find very interesting. And my final comment on PD Avengers, I was a PD Avenger starter as well. I think the energy and the passion that comes with the PD Avengers team has been tremendous, and our ability to get insights about what's happening across the world in Parkinson's, I think, is immeasurably helped by the role of PD Avengers, and I'd encourage you to sign up as soon as you can. So thank you very much, Liz, and back to you.
Thanks, everyone. That is now officially the end of day 2 of ParkOn, and we hope to see you again tomorrow for our third and final day. Thanks again, everyone.